We have learned how to use HTML to set up a web page and to insert all the various elements that are associated with the page, such as images, links, and tables. In this lesson, we'll learn how to lay out the page and to give it some style so that it looks a little bit nicer. We'll do this using CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. There are three different kinds that can be used. Inline, which creates styles for just certain parts of your page. Embedded, which applies styles to a whole page. Or linked, which will apply the styles to an entire website. All three types can be used in conjunction with one another, hence the name cascading. For now, we will learn CSS using embedded styles. However, the codes for the three different types of CSS are all the same. They're just set up slightly differently. To create embedded styles, we will set up a section for it in the head of our page. Remember that everything in the head section is all background information, such as the styles we're creating, while the actual content and where our styles will be applied is in the body section. So in my code, I'll go between the opening head tag and the closing head tag to enter in a style tag. This style tag has an attribute of type equals text/CSS, being sure to put that value in quotation marks. And of course, I need to put in that closing style tag, which I will type in right before the closing head tag. I will start by creating styles for the body, so this will apply to everything that's on this page. To do this, I type in body, and note that there are not carets around it because this is not a tag. Then a space and an opening curly bracket, and then I type in each individual property. It's standard practice to put each property on a new line for clarity in reading the code, although it would still be correct and work just fine if they were all typed on the same line. First, I'll give some color to my background. The property for this is background-color. Then I type a colon, the value I want, and a semicolon. There are 16 common color words that can be used for the colors, such as green, red, blue, white, black, etc. However, if these basic colors do not give me the precise color that I want for my page, I can refine my colors by using hex codes. These are a 6-digit code that define color using the digits 0 through 9 and A through F. A Google search for hex codes will direct you to many charts like this one that will show you a palette of a wide variety of colors and the hex code to use for each. When typing in the hex code, it always must be preceded by the pound sign. It's important to keep in mind that the color that shows up on your computer may look slightly different on someone else's computer. Because I've made my background such a dark color, I'm going to make my text color lighter so that there's more contrast between the text and the background, making my page easier to read. The property for the text color is just color, and then I'll follow the same format as I did for the background property. So a colon, the color, and a semicolon. The final property of the body that I would like to change is the alignment. The default is having everything aligned to the left-hand side of the page, but I would like to center everything in my page instead. The property is text-align, and the value I want is center. Since these are the only properties of the body that I'd like to change for the time being, I will close the body styles with a closing curly bracket. Now if I would like to change the properties of any of the other elements on the page, I do it the same way. So for instance, in my styles for the body, I set my fonts to be a certain color. But what if I wanted to change the font color and the font style of just the header? I would do this by setting up properties for H1, since that is the element that contains my header. So I will type H1 and an opening curly bracket, and then I can type in the individual properties. First, I'll change the color of the H1, and then, to set it off from the rest of the text on the page, I'm going to give it a different font. The property for this is font-family, And then for the value, I can type in a couple of different fonts. The reason I do this is because different computers are going to have different fonts installed in their system. So when someone views my page on their computer, if they don't have Arial installed on their computer, then their browser will look on the computer for the next font in the list until one that is installed on the computer is found. Arial, Verdana, and Sans Serif are in fact most likely installed on most people's computers. These are all sans serif fonts, which means they don't have the little lines at the top and bottom of each letter. Common fonts that do have serifs include Times New Roman and Garamond. Now that I'm done with the properties for the H1 element, I need to be sure to type in the closing curly bracket at the end of the list. So far, we've been applying properties to certain elements. But what if I instead want to apply styles to just a certain part of a page? For instance, a single paragraph, but not all of the paragraphs within the page. I can do this by using divs. The first thing I need to do is actually create the div in the body of my page. So if I want to apply styles to just this paragraph, I will place an opening div tag before it and a closing div at the end of where I want to apply the styles. Next, I need to name the div so I have something to refer to in my styles. So I give it an attribute of ID for identification, and then I can name that ID anything that I want. However, it does have to have its own unique name, meaning that no two divs can have the same ID. Once I've set up this div and given it a name, I have a way of referring to this particular section of my page. So now I go back up into my styles in the head section of my page. Since I'm referring to the ID of a div and not an element, I need to type in the £, and then I type in the div ID. From there, I type in the properties between the curly brackets, just as if I'm giving styles to a certain element. First, I'll change the height and the width of this div by typing width, 300px, which means it will be 300 pixels, and height, which I will set to 150 pixels. I can also put a border around this section, so I'll type border, and then I'll type in the three properties that must be included when using borders. The first is the color, another is the style, and then the size of the border. It's very important to include the style of the border because the default is none, so if this style isn't included, you won't see the border at all. These properties of width, height, and border can also be applied to single elements, such as an H1. Just as all the properties I've used in the body in the H1, such as the background color and the text alignment, can be applied just to a certain section of the page created by a div. The text align property that I use to center all the text within my page in the body properties will center the text within the div, but will not center the div itself. So if I want to center the div within the page, I have to set its margins to automatic. So I will type in margin-right auto, and then margin-left auto. And this will center the whole div within the page.